So I think we've gotten a couple new hashtags from you today. We've got broligarchs and we've got Days of Thunder. And those Days of Thunder, I assume, are in part going to come from those executive orders, right? So what is the executive order that you are fighting hardest for?
I mean, all the ones Stephen Miller and Homan have got, I think, a great grasp on both the deportations, the wall security. So that I think is covered by very smart guys who know this. The one I want that's not going to be the first day, but eventually get there, I want a complete 100% moratorium on all immigration until
legal,
we get our arms.
Including legal?
I say legal immigration in quotes. There is no legal immigration in this country. It's all a con. It's all a con against American workers. Every part of it. These programs have been so abused and so gamed. I believe we need a 100% moratorium for a while to get this sorted.
So, Steve,
and really
in a country made up of immigrants, you want a 100% moratorium on all immigration?
Just for a while. A moratorium until we get our arms around, so then we can have a factual conversation. What we need is to go and show the facts about what these visa programs have done, the people that can invest money here and get visas, all of it. The programs are so obscure, have been done behind closed doors, are so complicated. We need a discussion on that. And the American people are thirsting for a discussion on that.
Have you talked to President Trump about this?
I have not talked to President Trump about this, but I do talk every day on the show about this, so I know that the base of our movement and the base of our party support a moratorium. And I didn't say it's forever, but a moratorium until we get our arms around. So that's
Have you talked to Stephen Miller about it?
I've had discussions with a lot of people about this, but I have not talked to the president. The other one is to set up, I think, a refocus, like President Trump is talking about a new Monroe Doctrine from Panama to Greenland, is also to rethink all about taxes. We have an Internal Revenue Service that was set up basically in 1913, right? When we after the panic of 1906, 1907. One of the drivers I would love to see in the executive orders is set up an external revenue service, that we wouldn't just look at tariffs, but because tariffs paid for everything up until the early 20th century, but you wouldn't just look at tariffs, you look at everything about how you can charge fees, essentially, whether that's on investment, whether that's on other things of access to this country. This is America's behind the golden door. Okay, and this market's the most robust, lucrative market in the world, and we shouldn't just let people have access. We shouldn't let foreigners have access to this market and to the American people and American citizens for free. So I think I would love to see something that set up an external revenue service in Treasury that eventually took the burden off people on internal revenue services. There's no reason the American people, American corporations, even the donor class, has to pay for everything, and I think we have to rethink that. So things on revenue, other things on economics, on immigration, I think are important, and not just illegal. We've been focused so much on illegal immigration, we tend to forget that in the 2016 campaign, and particularly the 2016 primary, one of the biggest things President Trump had going for him was talking about this whole concept of legal immigration, which honestly is so gamed. There is no legal immigration in this country right now.
So you've got your perch here in the war room, but as far as we know, you're not going into the White House this time around. So who is the Steve Bannon in this administration that's going to have Trump's ear?
I think it's a very different structure. I think Susie is a safe pair of hands. Susie Wiles. I hired her actually in the 2016 campaign against the recommendation of President Trump at the time. She was fantastic. We would not have won Florida in 2016 if it had not been for Susie Wiles. We brought her in, I think, in August, right after I got there in September. She's fantastic. She's a safe pair of hands. She's got a way she runs things. I think you see a very different kind of White House staff and White House going forward than kind of the contentious in the open fighting that we had, but they were all for good reasons. There was different policies. I'm not so sure. I think President Trump, when you say Steve Bannon, President Trump's always been his own strategist. President Trump, and particularly if you look at the way he's managed this coalition so far, of how he put it together for this great victory across the board, this sweep of how he's actually managed it in the transition and how he managed it going forward. President Trump's a deal guy, and he understands how to I think, juggle opposing views and, quite frankly, strong personalities. So one thing I will note that many of the strongest personalities in President Trump's orbit are not going in the White House. Corey Lewandowski, Dave Bossie, Jason Miller, Boris Epstein, Steve Bannon. I see some pattern recognition there, and I think all of those people are going to be very strong voices on the outside in whatever vertical they're in. And so I would look for President Trump to have a lot of support both inside the White House with a much more smoothly running operation, and also outside with allies who now have kind of their, as you call them, perches or their own kind of verticals that can support the president in the policies that he's eventually going to want to drive.
Susie Wiles plans to be sort of a gatekeeper in the White House. Do you believe she can execute that role? And do you think that the right people will be gatekept, so to speak?
This is, Susie, I think, smart enough to know there's one level of gatekeeping and then another. Look, the failures of John Kelly and others, President Trump's President Trump. You know, he's in his 70s now. He's got a House style. And one thing people should know, he's always trying to get input from a wide variety of people. People who the public doesn't even know, just to bounce ideas off him. He's always seeing how it plays in the room. He's very good at judging what people are thinking and where the country's going. This is one of his superpowers. And so and I think Susie's smart enough because you've seen so already on the campaign and so far in the transition. She doesn't try to go John Kelly on you. She doesn't try to hermetically seal the president because he can't be hermetically sealed. Particularly now, given that he knows 2020 was stolen, he came back in 2021, in those first couple of dark years when even Rupert Murdoch said we're going to make him a non-person, President Trump has gone up the learning curve of confidence in his own judgment and confidence in policies and also people that will have his back. So there's still going to be total access, I think, at one level to President Trump because this is just the way, this is his House style. I think she is going to have a little more management, so it's maybe not quite so chaotic at the staff level. Although I will say, particularly in that first year, all the benefits of the economy and foreign policy, the peace and prosperity of 19, those seeds were sown with Reince Priebus and the team, with all the fighting that went on. They were all sown in 2017. That's why this first 100 the days of thunder next week, the first 100 days, the first 6 months, and the first year, to me, are everything in this, because the seeds of peace and prosperity that President Trump is dedicated to bring back, it's all going to be sown there. That will all be where it's either sown or where it's not sown. And so that's where this fight the next year is going to be so intense.
Now, to be clear, I know this has been slipped in a couple of times. There's been no evidence of widespread fraud in 2020, but I don't want to look back. Let's keep looking forward.
Hang on. Ho. Look at Jack Smith's, there's no thing of widespread fraud. Please, hang on, Dasha. I understand you've got a legal thing you have to do. I appreciate that. But why is the J6 committee having people go to the White House and beg for blanket preemptive pardons? Right? Why is Jack Smith and his team quitting early and also talking to people about pardons? This has to be.
Well, they're worried about political persecution in the same way that you have claimed that that's an issue.
Hey, if they just thought it was political persecution, they wouldn't be worried. They're worried. This has to be totally adjudicated. You have to adjudicate 2020. You have to adjudicate J6. You have to adjudicate the vast criminal conspiracy against President Trump. And on this one, we're absolutely adamant. President Trump needs to do this for this country, not for himself. You see last night, the Jack Smith thing's a nothing burger. Total nothing burger.
Well, look, Steve, President Trump himself has said he wants to look to the future. So let's keep doing that, because otherwise we're going to get off the rails real fast here.
President Trump does want to look to the future. He says his retribution will be peace and prosperity. That doesn't mean that some of his colleagues that understand what they not just tried to do to him, but did to this country, has to be adjudicated. And this is going to be a big effort, I think, of people try to get President Trump on board to do that. Like I said, President Trump is not a vindictive person. President Trump is not someone that looks for revenge, but we need to do this for the country. And you should know, there are elements of President Trump's coalition that are absolutely adamant that this has to be done. This weaponization has to be taken out root and branch from this government.
So you say he's not a vindictive person, but you do want to see some vindictiveness?
No, not vindictive. This is not. Look, I went to a federal prison for 4 months. I'm not vindictive about that at all. That is what it is, but I did it on a reason to not bend the knee to Nancy Pelosi in an illegitimate J6 committee that's now begging the White House for blanket preemptive pardons. Benny Thompson, the chairman's, it's publicly, and again today it's in Punch Bowl about they've got a scoop about how they're doing it. So listen, this is not about vindication. It's not about revenge. This is about we can never allow this to happen again. And the only way that's going to happen is you have to put forward to the American people what the actual facts are. What the facts are of 2020, what the facts are of J6, what the facts are of this vast criminal conspiracy that came after President Trump. Hell, he was indicted for, 92 felonies? This kangaroo court in New York is got him for 34 felonies. That all has to be from New York City to Georgia to Washington, D.C. That has to be fully vetted, investigated, and adjudicated. And I've strongly recommended a special prosecutor that doesn't report to the Justice Department. The special prosecutor to me should report right to the White House.
Steve, you mentioned your stint in prison in 2024. You're also facing trial again in February on charges related to alleged money laundering, conspiracy, and a scheme to defraud. That's something that Trump can't pardon you in that case. How is that all going to impact your ability to help President Trump enact his agenda?
It's not going to impact at all. First off, the situation in New York, I'm not worried about whatsoever. We will take care of that and won't impact me. No offense, I come out of prison this time with more power, more impact, more focus than I had going in. So I'm not afraid of prison. I'm not afraid of any charges they put up. I'm not afraid of any kangaroo court. I'm simply not afraid of it. So we'll take care of the situation in New York, another political persecution, but we'll get through that and won't impact me whatsoever.
And lastly, I know you're close with Don Jr. The Trump family this time around, there's a different dynamic. Jared and Ivanka aren't going to be involved, but what do you think will be the role of the Trump family and folks like Don and Eric?
By the way, I'm working very closely with Jared. I'm working very closely with Jared on prison reform. Jared Kushner and I met a year ago at the Jim Caviezel film at Bedminster and made a pact that we would work together to make sure President Trump was reelected. That was that imperative. And I am a big supporter of all the prison reform in the First Step Act that Jared Kushner, there'll be some announcement, I think, in the future about Jared and I working together on the First Step Act and prison reform. We're big believers in prison reform. I think, obviously, Don Jr., who's a fantastic guy and we're very close with, Don Jr. has taken more of a lead role, but Eric and Laura did such an amazing job at the RNC, so we're working very well with the family, and particularly I'm working very well with Jared Kushner. And Jared Kushner, I'm telling you, has done something to help this country that's very significant, and that is prison reform, which we need dramatically.
All right, Steve, I know you got a show to record. Thank you so much for beaming in here, and sorry for the technical difficulties, everyone. Steve, thanks so much.
Dasha, thank you, and thank Politico for having me.
Ding dong.